Thank you for clicking. Thank you for clicking. You didn't have to. We appreciate it, though. It's episode 11 of AnikDotes presented by Draftkings. I'm Jon Anik. Great to be with you. Little extra pep in my step this week. It's a pay-per-view week, and we're going to take a closer look at the UFC's latest pay-per-view offering, largely with a focus on the betting front today. This week, our focus, of course, UFC 274, Oliveira versus Gaethje. Saturday night, Phoenix, Arizona, ESPN Plus pay-per-view. It's hard for me to be in this little box, right? Maybe next time we'll do the show standing up so I can just go crazy. I used to do my UFC voiceover standing up. Now I've sort of settled down a little bit, if you want to call it that. We're going to look at all the odds for the main card. Slight focus on the lightweight title fight challenger, Justin Gaethje, today. Your questions and comments in our Q&A segment. That will be the bulk of the show as usual. And I will also let you know where my action is for this week and this month ahead in the NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs. But we start, as always, with main event mathematics. And your main event of UFC 274, lightweight champ Charles Oliveira against the number one contender, Justin Gaethje. Right now, live odds as of this moment. It is Monday, May 2nd on Draftkings Sportsbook. Charles Oliveira minus 165, Justin Gaethje plus 145. So a lot of fight fans and bettors that I have talked to are certainly going to be looking at propositions for this fight. Gaethje or Charles Oliveira by knockout. Maybe you like Chucky Olives by submission. But today we're going to look at Gaethje's UFC odds history, specifically when he has been a betting underdog as he is entrenched this weekend. So Justin Gaethje, 6-3 overall in the UFC, 4-1 when fighting as the betting favorite, 2-2 when fighting as the underdog, as he is here this weekend. So April of 2018, Gaethje lost as a super slight underdog, plus 105 against Dustin Poirier. Then August of that year, closed around plus 120 against James Vick. That ended up being a first-round knockout for Justin Gaethje. Then he won again by first-round knockout when he was an even money underdog against Edson Barboza. You're seeing a trend here, right? A lot of Gaethje's fights on paper in the UFC have been close, at least on the number. The Barboza knockout, March of 2019 in Philly. So both of those essentially pick'ems, really, depending on when you place your wager. And then the biggest price on Gaethje in the UFC to date, plus 240 for the title fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. So given the odds history on Justin Gaethje, perhaps you can understand why some might see value on Justin Gaethje at plus 145. And obviously you're getting a juicier price if you like Justin by knockout. Poll question results. Who wins the UFC lightweight championship and how do they get it done? So 56.1% of about 4,000 said Charles Oliveira by finish. 35.6% if you like Justin Gaethje by stoppage. Then 4.9% on Oliveira by decision. Then 3.5% if you like Gaethje on points. So if this one goes to the scorecards, I think we all agree this is probably going to be an instant classic. We'll have a lot more on that fight, obviously, coming up in our Q&A segment. Co-main event odds, though, right now, strawweight championship, Rose Namajunas in defense, minus 195. Former champion Carla Esparza, plus 165. Total 4.5 rounds. The over juice to minus 185. The under 4.5 rounds is at plus 150. First fight between these two, kind of feel like a lot of this should be tossed out. But it was back in 2014, essentially closed as a pick'em. Esparza did open a minus 130 favorite. Other main card notables for UFC 274, Michael Chandler, minus 410. Tony Ferguson, plus 310. More on that coming up shortly. Donald Cowboy Cerrone is back. He's minus 170. Joe Lozon back for the first time in a long time. He is plus 150. And then the rematch between Ovince St. Preux and Shogun Rua, OSP, minus 240. Mauricio Shogun Rua, the legend, is plus 195. Obviously, we're loaded this weekend in Phoenix. Maybe we'll see a calf slicer, maybe a Peruvian necktie, spinning back fist. There are tons of ways to come out on top in the octagon. For UFC 274, there is one more with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. New customers can bet $5 on any fighter to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. So pretty simple. Strategically choose your fighter. You sit back, watch the action unfold. Don't have to tell most of you that anything can happen on fight night. And with DraftKings Sportsbook, you're getting a sure thing here for UFC 274. Any fighter, you bet $5, get $150 if they win. You can be chalky about this, folks. Pick a big favorite. It doesn't matter. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code ANIK, A-N-I-K. Throw down $5 on any UFC 274 fighter to win and get $150 in free bets if they do so. That's code ANIK this Saturday at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right. A lot of great submissions this week. Let us get to Q&A. as we call on our producer, Cody Merrow, for our UFC 274 related questions. AnikDotes is a great name for a show. That seems to be the response from the audience. We appreciate it. You know, my dad did me a solid there with the last name. Q and Anik's okay. We could probably do better than that. But I think it's okay for now. It's good to see your shining face, Cody Merrow. What's going on?
Well, they call me Coach Damas with how my predictions have been going on the AnikDotes features. So if you're following the Cody Merrow picks from AnikDotes, you're winning money with DraftKings Sportsbook.
All right, so we have like 14 questions to get to today. So if you have a faster tone, like the one I invoke for UFC promos when I speed it up a little bit, we'll take it today because I want to get to as many as possible until you cut me off. Let's have at it.
Turning and burning with Santino DeFranco, he asks, as someone who sees all of the action up close, do you think fans versus no fans has an impact on how the fighters perform?
So that is the great Santino DeFranco from Fight Ready, one of the sharpest minds in the MMA game. So I'm humbled to get the question from him. And I also feel like he has more expertise in this area than me, but it is an important talking point because, to be sure, it affects some fighters positively and negatively. I think, Dominic Cruz has said maybe a bad warm-up can be negated by a crowd lifting you up, and that has not been the reality for most fighters competing at the UFC Apex. Tisha Torres has talked about the benefits of it, sort of feeling like a sparring session, and she has competed well in that setting. I think Jan Blachowicz, the former UFC light heavyweight champion, may have benefited from the lack of fans or fanfare when he won the title against Dominic Reyes. And we have had fighters request to fight in front of fans when most of the shows, at least over the last 2 years, have taken place without fans. And you can be sure, to a man, to a woman on this roster, I think they would tell you they get an adrenaline, if not cardio boost from the crowd. So thankfully, normalcy seems on the horizon, and it does go both ways. But I think more often than not, for broadcasters, for fighters, the crowd can be a performance enhancer. Thank you, Santino. My man.
Isaiah Peck at GSW_3011. Do you think Justin Gaethje's striking power or Oliveira's grappling or ground game will be more of an X factor on Saturday night?
My man, I'm not sure that either one of those are going to be an X factor per se. I think there's a lot to be said about Justin Gaethje's striking that doesn't have to just do with power in terms of his ability to sort of create angles and force mistakes and openings from the opposition. I actually would submit to you that I think Charles Oliveira's striking can be an X factor. He is just so underrated in that area. And I'm not sure if he's getting predictive because he's just sick of all the pre-fight hype and talk. But he has predicted a knockout, and I do believe he has a point to prove in some way, shape, or form in that area. So I do think Chucky Olives, if I can call him that, hopefully he's not watching AnikDotes. I think the champion Charles Oliveira and his striking could actually be the X factor on Saturday night. We shall see.
Boha, John. Boha.
I don't know what that means. I don't like when you invoke your Brazilian Portuguese. I don't.
That's okay. Neither do I. At Victorious416. Why is Sal D'Amato still working in the UFC? Guy blows at least one call every event. That's from Victorious, not from me, Sal. I'm sorry.
And we did debate whether or not to put this question in the show. Normally, I don't screen the questions, but with this one, we did screen it because I think Sal D'Amato is an elite judge, and I have said as much repeatedly on the Anik and Florian podcast. But there have been a few scorecards of Sal's of late, that have drawn ire, if not question, from the MMA masses. And I certainly haven't agreed with some recent calls, most notably the one that is the result of this question, the Andrei Arlovski-Jake Collier fight this past weekend. You had one dissenting judge who had it 30-27 for Jake Collier, and then you had Sal and the other judge who had it 29-28 for Andrei Arlovski. And herein lies the issue as far as the fans are concerned, and this viewer is concerned. Couldn't find a media score or really any fan score out there, if you poll 100 people for Andrei Arlovski, right? And then obviously you have a couple of the judges who are employed to give their scorecard who have it for Andrei. But I would just say on Sal, over the last 2 years, he has been consistently good, if not the best guy in the space. And if I'm wrong, at Jon_Anik, send me his 10 worst decisions, right, over the last year, 18 months or so, honestly, and I'll see if you're onto something. But I think by and large, he's been pretty consistent.
Those in glass houses, John. Those in glass houses. At Johnny Thump asks, other than a great chin, what problems can Justin give Charlie Olives?
Oh, he's got more than a chin, doesn't he? I mean, Cody, you could take this one, right? Conditioning, cardio, power, footwork, right? I do believe if he gets a clean shot off and hurts Charles Oliveira, he'll put him away or has the chance to, right? I know Michael Chandler had Charles on the proverbial ropes, and Charles masterfully sort of rallied and got himself back into that fight. And at the end of that round, Charles Oliveira got up with urgency, with conviction, right? So he's a hard guy to put away. But Gaethje's very focused in those fight-ending moments. So he's got more ways to win than you think.
Well, and I do think, going back to your last question, John, the X factor that Charlie Olives brings is not so much the striking, but the recovery. Not many people can recover like Charlie Olives. He's shown it in the last 2 fights. I think that's an interesting point coming into the next fight. 2 more interesting points. One from @not_Yakim. What is Justin's next move if he can't beat Oliveira? He seems focused on the belt only, but this could be his second loss at the 150-pound title.
Yeah.
And then @Tony290614 asks, "Hi, John. What do you think about a fight between Nate Diaz and Justin Gaethje? I think that would be a war."
Yeah, they got into it a little bit on social media, and so that certainly can lay a foundation for a fight. I mean, Justin Gaethje and Nate Diaz makes a ton of sense in any year, in any promotion, in any form. I think there are a lot of big fights left for Justin Gaethje. I still think 33 or so years of age, he could rebuild himself were he to lose in this second attempt at the Undisputed Championship. You got the Poirier rematch, which in theory could position him for another opportunity. I mean, Islam Makhachev could factor prominently in all of this, as could Beneil Dariush. You have the Conor McGregor fight that could be a jumping off point for Justin Gaethje. So I don't know. I think stylistically, he's our version of Dominique Wilkins, right? I mean, he really is. He is the human highlight film, and there's a lot more to him than just highlights. So I don't know. If anybody can rebuild themselves, depending on the matchup and who the champion would be, I would certainly put my money on Gaethje. So I don't think all is lost with a second title loss this weekend.
So he's like a modern day LeBron James, right? For the contemporaries.
Yeah, there you go.
Next question from Marcos Ignoretto. Coming from a guy who chose Oliveira to beat Chandler and Poirier, am I crazy to think that he won't get it done against Gaethje on Saturday?
I love this question, Marcos, right? So if I was allowed to bet on the UFC, right, maybe my Oliveira handicap might be as simple as there's just no way I'd walk to a window right now and bet against Charles Oliveira. Like, there's got to be a better option on the board. Find a Major League Baseball game. Find something else out there. Now, if you love Gaethje by knockout or you like Justin plus 145, have at it. I'm just saying, given current form, given what we have seen recently, I just feel like there's got to be a better option on the board. Find another fight to bet on. So I sort of understand where you are coming from right now, Marcos. Absolutely, you are not crazy.
You'd be better off betting the series price on the Celts after that last loss, huh?
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't feel good about that. I think, Milwaukee right now, minus 125 or so to win the series, 1 love up. I don't know, man. I don't like the C's to win the series anymore. I hate to say it.
Tough price, but that can be had at Draftkings Sportsbook using Draftkings code Anik. @KevinUFC90 asks, can Marlon Vera become a champ? What does he need to improve on?
Well, if you didn't see Marlon Cheeto Vera last weekend, maybe this question doesn't hold as much weight for you, but he put on an absolute show, and I think he showed the masses that he absolutely can be champion. Some would argue he doesn't have to get off to a better start. In my humble opinion, I think he should try to focus a little bit on getting off to a better start and not playing with his food, so to speak. But, I think stylistically that is something that he does. And maybe in some way he's trying to sort of tucker out the opposition. And certainly he was able to sort of drag out a lot of strikes from Rob Font this past weekend. I always think fighters can improve their offensive submissions and their ability in that regard to really be able to put guys away. We know how violent Cheeto is in the clinch. So I think finding ways to get the fight there, especially at a 25-foot octagon, could be a priority. So good there. Wasn't necessarily able to get the fight there against Rob Font all that often and didn't need to win. But there's always room for improvement. But can Cheeto Vera be champion? Unequivocally, absolutely, yes, he can.
A resounding win against New England's own Rob Font last weekend. Next question from @KuzoBen. Despite Ferguson's recent skid, do you believe that Chandler ought to be such a large minus 410 favorite?
So it's always interesting when people suggest that maybe a guy, Gilbert Burns against Khamzat Chimaev or Tony Ferguson against Michael Chandler, are being disrespected by the odds makers, right? Largely, I would say this fight is properly priced, and that's not me taking a shot at Tony Ferguson. What it means is that this price is held for 10 days, So doesn't that mean that they are getting two-way action? right? Price is held steady all week long. I don't know. I mean, Ferguson's skid is why the price is what it is. Certainly, I hope he performs better than a plus 310 underdog, and it is my expectation that he will. So maybe that says I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I think the price is properly priced, but can Tony Ferguson win at plus 310 more than your average 3-1 underdog? Yeah, I think he probably can.
And the same argument can be had for the Rose Namajunas price, where many argue that that should be a heavier favorite, but the price remains the same as we enter fight week.
Yeah.
Coming up next from Halton Glass, and if Chandler wins, is it time for Ferguson to put down the gloves, baseball or UFC? Would it be a sad day for the sport?
Well, and actually it says would be a sad day for the sport. So this viewer is offering up their opinion. I mean, certainly I think most of us would agree it would be a sad day for the sport. I'm not in the business of retiring fighters, as most of our podcast audience knows. And there's so many ways to win or lose fights. You know, it's not as though Tony Ferguson has been finished in his last two. I mean, those Gaethje visuals are hard to deal with, but in his two fights since against Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira, he didn't get finished. And now he's had a year off essentially since that last fight in May of 2021. So I don't know, Cody. I kind of expect Tony to compete well this weekend. We'll see.
I don't think Tony Ferguson's ever going to retire. So I think that was a little asinine there.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's going to retire. I just hope that he can realize some more success before it is all said and done.
Agreed. At Austin McElroy, if Chandler wins, does that set up a date with Dustin Poirier? And could that be a de facto #1 contender fight?
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities in the lightweight top 6 or 7 right now are very interesting. And yeah, that fight piques my interest. You know, Dustin Poirier, I think at this stage of his career, can call some shots, you know, and command not just money, but some really big fights. Now, I get the sense that these guys don't really like each other, and I like that friction and that heat. I don't know if Dustin Poirier would have a competitive nature for this fight right now. But we'll see. You know, I don't know that Poirier wants to fight Covington. I don't know that he wants to fight Chandler. But I do know that he wants to fight. He wants to fight soon.
Well, anytime we can get the diamond in the octagon, we're going to take him. I don't care who he fights. The next question from @Zoltan_NY. This is pro fight number 16 for Thug Rose, and amazingly, her 5th rematch. She's 4-0 in those rematches with 3 wins over former champions. How much of her success do you think her team and coaching plays into that?
You know, it was interesting on UFC 274 Countdown to see her and Pat Barry watching back the first fight against Carla Esparza when Rose Namajunas is 22 years of age, 2-1 as a pro. And it's almost like you can tell Thug Rose is trying to be respectful to that version of herself, knowing full well that she's just a totally different beast than she was back then. And yes, the coaches deserve a huge portion of the credit. They knew they had the athlete that could realize greatness. And even Dana White deserves credit. You know, 8-9 years ago, he said she could be the next Ronda Rousey in terms of her star power. And in some respects, that really has played out. But from Pat Barry, who is such a good calming influence as fiance and coach, and Trevor Whitman. I mean, I don't have to tell this audience about his greatness. And Greg Nelson, you know, the Minnesota-based wrestling coach who factors prominently in this equation. Her training partners, Chico Camus and the rest. Well-coached, tight-knit team, elite athlete, all spells greatness and a Hall of Fame future for Thug Rose.
And when available, a main sparring partner for Valentina Shevchenko, the 125-pound champion. And another noted factor about this, Trevor Whitman, something that we've talked about before, not his first time having multiple fighters on a card back to back to back. So something that he's got experience with. I actually think he's a lot more comfortable in that environment when you see him in the coach's environment back to back like that. So just an interesting factor as we walk into UFC 274. This is AnikDotes. The next question from Don P. Midas. The Midas touch. If Charles finishes Justin in the first round, how does his win streak in the lightweight division compare to Khabib Nurmagomedov's?
So I did a little research today on this question. Khabib Nurmagomedov 13-0 in the UFC. Charles Oliveira right now has won 10 in a row. He has 20 UFC wins and is the most decorated finisher in UFC history. So, you know, Khabib Nurmagomedov eventually may be hurt by the lack of longevity, right? And you also look at his last 2 title defenses came against Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, 2 guys that Charles Oliveira come this time next week could have head-to-head wins over. So these resumes are sort of difficult to compare. And I think when we think about Khabib Nurmagomedov, we think about 29-0. We don't necessarily think about 13-0. And if you go to Charles Oliveira's Wikipedia page, you know, you see a lot of red stripes. But man, I don't know. it's hard because when you get a little bit too superlative in nature with your tone, I think the masses come at you. I'll just say I like this question, and it certainly opened up my mind to that comparison if indeed Charles Oliveira is able to add a scalp of Justin Gaethje's caliber to his resume this weekend.
It's an interesting fighter to look at. If you were to say he had probably the most impressive lineup of losses, I think you'd be right. Charles Oliveira, a very interesting list
big
of
names
losses
on there
for
sure. For sure.
Last question's from the Money Shrine. You know we love to make money here for people on AnikDotes. Gaethje and Ferguson have each held a piece of the UFC title. Do you think that if they never win an undisputed title, that they could look back on their careers and still feel fulfilled?
I hope they'll still be fulfilled. And I think part of my job at times is to help build up fighters. I was really trying to build up Andre Fili even before the fight this weekend, when I felt like he was a little bit clouded mentally in terms of what he had accomplished at 31 years of age. So, no, I think both of these guys are legendary lightweights. Justin Gaethje, most of his career took place outside the UFC, but certainly he's a UFC Hall of Fame caliber fighter. And I think Tony Ferguson should go into the UFC Hall of Fame for sure, even though he never even fought for the undisputed belt or has yet to do so. Obviously, there was that visual of Justin Gaethje when he won the interim championship, sort of being dismissive of that belt. But he has that UFC belt at home, and obviously he can change his whole legacy in a few days here. But I would hope that those guys would be fulfilled and sort of recognize the value of that interim gold. They were the best in the world at a time when the undisputed champion wasn't able to compete for whatever the reason was. So I don't know. I would hope that they would be able to sort of lean into that positivity, but they don't want to hear that noise this week. All right, Cody Merrow, Q&A, good stuff this week on AnikDotes. And now I get to talk about all the tickets that I ripped up and my action going forward. So I got to be honest with this audience, and, I'm not third-party track, but I think I'm pretty transparent when it comes to my losses. But this is one of my best stretches as a daily sports bettor. I've been in the black 12 of the last 15 days. That included a hit on a 17 parlay. I did that was all chasing though, right? Like you could say I gave all the winnings back because if you know me and you know how I bet against the Boston teams because they're so close to my heart. So I lost $1,600 on the Brooklyn Nets and was able to recoup all that money by realizing a lot of success in Major League Baseball and in hockey and in basketball, other places. But if you don't understand what I'm doing betting against my teams by now, I understand why you think I'm crazy. Couple other things of note. Most everyone in the baseball betting community, and if you're in the betting community at all, I hope you hear this. If you've never bet on Major League Baseball before, maybe it's time to start. But most of us have been fading the Cincinnati Reds on a daily basis for the last 8 or 9 days. They are 3-19 as of this taping. The Cincinnati Baseball Reds are 3-19. So I hope that that region enjoyed the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl because it's going to be a long summer in Cincinnati, Ohio. All right, some of my action going forward. Carolina Hurricanes -115 in their series against the Boston Bruins for obvious reasons, but I do like Carolina, forced to choose. I like the snake-bitten Toronto Maple Leafs, Cody, -120 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. I have the New York Rangers -115 in their opening round series with the Pittsburgh Penguins. NBA tickets over the course of the season that I still have breathing. Philadelphia 76ers +870 to win the East. Miami Heat +460 to win the East. So at least we're getting one of those dogs into the Eastern Conference Finals. I also have the Miami Heat at +1000 to win the NBA title. St. Louis Blues 26-1 to win the Stanley Cup. They have a difficult opening round series. They're a slight underdog, but I think they can win it. I do think that ticket is still alive and breathing. Buffalo Bills 7-1 to win the Super Bowl. Not a lot of value. I did bet that when I was out in Las Vegas. They are the favorites, and that will be the team that I'll be betting on periodically because I do think that they're going to have to at least be in the Final Four. And when I go about my NFL future betting, value or otherwise, I try to find the team that I think is most likely to be in the Final Four, and I perpetually bet on them throughout the season when I see value. Also, maybe I'm a sucker, but I did play the Las Vegas Raiders 23-1 to win the AFC, not to win the Super Bowl. Just got to win the AFC. The depth chart is absurd. Let's go Josh McDaniels. Let's go Derek Carr. All right, that's it. UFC 274 episode of AnikDotes is in the proverbial books. It all goes down Saturday night live on pay-per-view. More coverage throughout the week on all of our social channels at Jon_Anik, also at Draftkings for the Draftkings Sportsbook, at DK Sportsbook on Twitter and on Instagram. It is Draftkings_Sportsbook. Also, the DraftKings Sportsbook will have the People's Parlay back in effect for UFC 274. You can check out my Twitter feed for that as well. Choose which parlay gets boosted in the book. You have a say in that. We'll also have a betting preview for UFC 274, so look out for that content on the UFC's YouTube channel as well. I hope it's a good week for you in the sportsbook and beyond. Thank you to our producer, Cody Merrow. Thanks to everybody who hashtagged AnikDotes, who chimed in for our question and answer segment. And we got to get on out of here. Wheels up to Phoenix, Arizona, baby. UFC 274 under the lights. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate you ingesting this content. We will be back for UFC 275. Until then, take care of yourselves. Stay healthy. Don't text and drive. Yo, later.